know you may not know what Contact Singapore is. Contact Singapore is actually a Singapore government agency. So what I do, and hopefully do well, I engage global professionals like yourself about career opportunities, in this case, research opportunities in Singapore for people who do research in diabetes-related diseases. We actually are hiring, and we welcome people who actually want to work in Singapore. So what I'll do is I'll give you a very quick introduction to what Singapore does. And if you are interested, we have a booth there. My colleague can answer questions, and you can take materials from us as well. Can I just have a show of hands? Has any of you been to Singapore? Only one? In the last, oh, the 1, 2, 3, okay. In the last 3 years? Yes, about that? Okay, so this is an image of Singapore, and I promise you it was not Photoshopped. So in case you are not aware, Singapore is tropical. This is what you will see in Singapore 365 days in a year. In other words, we are tropical, and there's only one season, summer, and maybe summer with rain. So if you happen to be in Singapore and you don't see this view, that probably just means you wait another day and it stops raining, and this is what you will see. And for the people who have been to Singapore, they can tell you that this is what they saw. I did not Photoshop because I don't know how to. So basically, this is a photo taken right in the heart of the city. We are a great place, even if you choose not to work in Singapore. We are a great place to visit as well. Right, so research is very strategic to Singapore. Unlike the rest of the world, and in particular, I think North America as well, research funding has been cut. Singapore has actually consistently increased research funding. In fact, we've just increased research funding by 18%. So we continue to increase research funding, and it's about, sorry, it's actually cut off, but it's actually 90 billion Singapore dollars in research alone. So in terms of our portfolio, we have actually indicated or invested, or we're going to invest 4 billion in biomedical sciences, and this includes hiring from overseas and manpower researchers for the research sector as well. This is just a quick overview of the kind of research packages that people actually get. So just as an example, National Research Foundation is like your National Science Foundation in the US, and 5 billion, 5-year research grant is up to 2.4 million US dollars, which means a researcher can get up to 2.4 million research funding, and this is excluding the basic remuneration package that you actually get from whichever research institute that you're actually working with. So we actually have like different people from around the world coming to Singapore to actually do research. Just a quick show. This is a map of Singapore. We have 50 R&D centers, 50 manufacturing plants, 30 leading regional headquarters, about 1 billion Singapore dollars in R&D expenditure, and about 4,000 public researchers in Singapore as well. So basically, this is just to highlight that I know most of you may not have heard of Singapore. Our GDP grows about 2 to 4 billion a year, and 2 to 4% growth even in year of recession. You may not think that we actually have manufacturing, but actually if you wear contact lens, 10% of the world contact lens is actually manufactured in Singapore. And increasingly our R&D, especially for tropical emerging diseases, we are actually one of the best places to do research. So just to give you a quick sense, we have the research agencies. We're research agencies. We have actually almost all the top pharma companies that you can think of, we have in Singapore. We actually work with the universities that are based in Singapore as well. And then we have clinical institutes that does research as well as offer actual services. In general, the areas that we're really looking at is computational and system biology, metabolic diseases, as well as health services research. Those are the key areas that are urgently hiring researchers. This, I think most people are interested in, is the translational clinical research. So this is just basically based on the grades and what are the annual salary range that we actually offer in Singapore. I have actually engaged quite a few researchers who have moved from North America to Singapore, and I've never heard anyone complain about remuneration. So I'm very sure that our remuneration is at least comparable to what you're getting, but I'm even more sure that the research funding you get in Singapore is higher. So these are just some of the positions that are available. I'm not going to run it through. If you're interested, you can find out from us as well. But this is just some of the institutes, and all of them are hiring. And in particular for diabetic diseases, Duke NUS is an alliance between Duke and National University of Singapore. They are particularly looking for people who does research in diabetics, so senior fellow, research fellow, as well as senior research fellow as well as research fellows. In particular, what's interesting about Singapore is we still offer tenure track. So when you apply, you will actually know whether you are applying for a tenure track or not. So finally, I just want to do a very quick, why should you work in Singapore? Other than the fact that we offer a good research landscape and environment for you to do research for tropical diseases in particular, we have the best phenotypes because Singapore has a mix of different races. So we have the Chinese, Malay, Indians, and then we have a 20% non-Asian expatriates in Singapore as well. So in terms of phenotypes, we're actually the best place if you want to do different kinds of phenotypes research. Why Singapore other than work? We're the safest country in Asia. Before I came to US, I didn't understand what it meant by it's the safest country in Asia. Growing up in Singapore, as a single female, you can walk in any part of Singapore at 3 a.m. and be safe. You can walk anywhere and be safe. Honestly, if you happen to meet the fellow Singaporean that is in the US, they will probably be the ones who will leave their handphone and their bags while they run to the restroom because they grew up in an environment which is so safe that if you leave your mobile phone on the table, you leave your bag in a public area, nobody will actually take it. So we're so used to it that like when I first came to North America and I'm based in San Francisco and people tell me, you know, there are places that you cannot drive in, you should not get off the car in Tenderloin, you should avoid this area. These are things that it never occurred to me growing up in Asia and growing up in Singapore. Now I can now tell you with pride that Singapore is the safest country in Asia. Nobody move for a job. If you have a family, this is a place where your daughters can go to school and nobody will carry guns and fire you at them. Honestly, it's also a place where if, for whatever reason, your son needs to go clubbing and come home at 3 a.m., he will not get beaten up on the way home and he will actually arrive home safely on the public transport. In other words, we are very safe, a great place to bring up families. We hire from overseas, so it's a global career. In other words, you are competing and working with an international team, just that you're based in Asia. So there is no such thing as a Singapore culture. It's really a culture in which you work, whichever countries company you're working for. So if you're working for an American company, it's an American culture. You happen to be working for a European company, it's a European culture. If you don't want to work longer hours, then maybe don't apply for an Asian company. In general, Japanese and Korean companies do work slightly longer hours compared to their American companies. That's just the company's characteristics. It's not because it's Singapore, it's just the company you're working for. Income tax, I'll do a little bit of tax later. We have a great work pass system, so we're so efficient that from the day you apply for employment visa, completed application form, to the day you get a result, 7 working days. You will know whether you get an employment visa to work in Singapore. We have an excellent public school system. In fact, we are consistently ranked the top in maths and science over 144 countries for the last 5 years. So I actually have candidates who want to move to Singapore because they want their children to actually do the maths and science education in Singapore. So we have an excellent school system. Best healthcare system in Asia. Again, I didn't appreciate this until I moved to the US. Now I realize healthcare is really expensive in the US. So Singapore, from consultation for the basic cold and cough to getting medication, is about give and take $30 to $50 including your medication and no more than that. So it's actually very unheard of to actually have health insurance for primary care. Everybody actually can afford primary care. $30 to $50 that I'm talking about is actually private clinic. If you go to the public clinic that is actually subsidized by the government, it's about $11 just for the common cold, cough plus the medication. Just to give you another example, last year I went back to Singapore, unfortunately came down with food poisoning plus dehydration in Singapore, was rushed to the ER, emergency, stayed overnight, 3 drip, 2 injections. I was told if I was in the US, it would have cost about 10 grand for hospitalization plus all the treatment that I got. In Singapore, I happen to have secondary care health insurance. Apparently, my bill came out to $500 Singapore dollars, which is about $450 US. My insurance paid the entire amount, and then they gave me a check for $150 because apparently the day I was in the hospital, I couldn't work, and therefore they compensated me for being in the hospital. In general, what it means is healthcare remains affordable in Asia, and Singapore has a very high quality of healthcare. We are ranked the best by WHO for Asia. We are very small, probably not a country cultural map, but any act that travel any cities will come to Singapore, so you can watch Lady Gaga, any musical that travels, you will actually watch them in Singapore as well. Because we are summer all year round, we actually have a lot of performances that do not have to worry about whether it snows and bad weather program. So Shakespeare in the Park, Ballet Under the Stars, you can see them all year round. Finally, we are a great place to explore Asia. Within a 4 to 6 hour flight, you can go to any part of Asia. And if you have not been to Asia, we have a diverse culture. We have very, very different landscape that you can see, different kind of culture and people. And honestly, I have a lot of candidates who move because they want to explore Asia. And because budget airline is such a big thing in Asia, if you plan ahead, I went to Taiwan, which is 6 hours away, at a $9.90 air ticket. $9.90. So if you plan in advance, the budget airline is well connected. You can fly anywhere within a 6 hours flight time. Finally, I want to talk about income tax. I don't know whether you know, but Singapore has the highest millionaire per capita in the world. And even if you're a millionaire in Singapore, you don't pay more than 20% income tax. In other words, most people pay about 7 to 15% income tax in Singapore, and that's the maximum tax that you'll pay. If you happen to be American or green card holder, the IRS requires that you pay tax as well to the US. So the first $100,000 that you earn, you pay Singapore tax, so you pay about 11,000 Singapore dollars, give and take about 10 grand US dollars. So what it means is, at the first $100,000 that you earn in Singapore, you're better off because you pay Singapore tax, so your take-home pay is definitely higher. Second, it means that at no point are you worse off. If you earn $100 more than $100,000, you will pay the same tax rate that you have paid if you were working in the US. So if you were paying 40% in the US, that $100 you will pay 40%, of which you are actually giving 15% to the US government and the rest to the Singapore government and the US government. At no point are you taxed twice for the same amount you earn. At the lower income bracket, you're better off because your pay is higher because you tax less. Finally, I just want to add, if tax is a very important reason for why you want to think about moving, do get a tax consultant, and they can help you with planning what's the best way to earn and where you should earn your money. Finally, I just want to tell you, Contact Singapore is here because we are a resource. It's a complimentary service. I don't get a commission. I'm not a headhunter. I don't get a commission whether you come to Singapore or not. I'm just here to offer you an opportunity to tell you how to apply for a job if you are interested in. I will not stalk your CV. I do not look at your CV. In fact, if you apply on the portal, those jobs that are listed there, based on sectors, you just have to apply. The employers actually get the CV directly, and if they are interested to talk to you, they will actually contact you. So finally, if Contact Singapore can help you in any way, if you happen to be moving to Singapore and need some advice or information, we're more than happy to help you. So those are the information. We are on the website. You have our Facebook address, our LinkedIn. You have my email address here. You can contact us in various ways. In fact, I actually have a session tomorrow evening after the conference from 7 to 9. It's actually here. I will actually talk a little bit more about the research jobs itself. So if you're interested, feel free to join us. And then we can also do a more detailed Q&A. I will actually cover some of the aspects of living in Singapore during the session tomorrow as well. Other than that, I'm going to leave you with a video that tells you what Contact Singapore does. If we have any questions, we'll be around at the back. Other than that, thank you very much for your attention, and I'm glad no one fell asleep. Thank you very much.